Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello everyone and welcome along to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. It is the morning after the night before. Kerry are the All-Ireland football champions. Ciarán and Enda are with myself and Rory to reflect on it all. And given that the four of us were all working on the Sunday game yesterday, I feel like we have literally been talking about this match for a solid 24 hours. But Ciarán, where's your head at today as you reflect on sort of Kerry's achievement, I guess, as a whole, how complete the performance was, how brilliant the individual and the collective was yesterday? Because it seems to so many people, even reading the newspapers today, that maybe it was their greatest one of all.
Yeah, Jacqui, like it was really, when you come away from a lot of All-Ireland finals, you can look at the ifs and the buts and, the maybes, but yesterday was just clinical from a Kerry perspective. And I think the fact we sat around the table yesterday evening and we had a long discussion around man of the match, and we had like four probably really, really strong contenders, probably just verified the strength of the Kerry performance, the dominance of it. How they went from it right from the off, and they played the game on their terms and really blew the Donegal system out of the water, and probably even exposed Donegal with that lack of plan B, where, when they did fall behind, they lacked a bit of imagination and how they're going to change things up and stuff like that. And listen, to be honest, we all came into the game probably thinking Donegal had a lot of kind of 8 out of 10 players. They had a lot of options, a lot of scoring threats. They weren't over reliant on one or two individuals. Fellas could pop up against scores, from various positions. But that was the difference. Kerry had the X factor in those 3 or 4 players that they had. Paddy's role. Now, I'm sure that discussion of how Paddy Clifford was allowed to control the whole game will fill a lot of inches and airtime in Donegal, I'm sure, over the next couple of days, because, Kerry, Donegal handed him the keys to unlock the whole match. And then you had David, you had Gavin White showing leadership right from the start. His first 15 minutes was electric. And then you had Joe O'Connor, who was powerful around the middle. And Kerry just had that X factor, these players that were just a step ahead of them. Simple as that. But a very clinical All-Ireland performance, as you said, one of their best, I think, in a long time.
Which is maybe a warning to the rest of the country and about what might be coming, because, Kerry, once they get a sniff of winning, I mean, this team just looks like they are in formidable form to go again.
Yeah, their age profile is scary. Like nearly from all of the top teams, their age profile is best. Dublin will lose probably a few more. Galway have been there now quite a while and have miles in the clock. Donegal have several older players. Tyrone have several older players. Armagh have several older players. Kerry have Paul Geaney, and the rest are all coming to their prime. They're 24, 25, 26. The prime is largely regarded as 27. So it is frightening. I feel like doing the nation a favour and sending clips of Joe O'Connor to the AFL scouts and saying, boys, you've missed one here.
And they only missed him because he was playing rugby, and he was so good at that as well.
Exactly. Funny, Fitzmaurice I was chatting to him and I was saying the same thing. Jeez, we should have had Joe O'Connor away out of here. And he says, funny, that's our plan now down the kingdom. They play other sports until they're senior, and then we pull them into senior and away we go. So look, and Kerry, like, much has been made of Tyrone's underage potential coming through with 2 good under-20 teams recently. Kerry had 2 under-20 teams every bit as good, and they're coming into that senior setup. So, ominous years ahead for everybody else. But I suppose for me, we are looking at the game being brought to a new level. I always sort of felt over the past several years, the fitness and conditioning level of the players, the skills, their decision making was all, you could see in glimpses the level of quality that players were now producing compared to whenever ourselves was playing. But you just felt a tweak or two here with the rules, and the game could come alive. Well, it wasn't a tweak or two, it was an absolute chainsaw to the rules. But the game is now, and that for me was one of the highest level of Gaelic football performances we have seen in terms of just the level that our game can be played at. Was it a full 70 minutes? Well, thankfully it wasn't. It was a stunning 20 minutes and then a really solid remaining 50 minutes. But yeah, they have without a doubt raised the bar.
Do you know what I think is maybe the most impressive part about Rory is, do you remember we were on this podcast going back when Cork played against Kerry in Munster, and we felt at the time, you know, you were on here saying it was a real missed opportunity. Kerry were there for the taking or whatever. I think it's where they've gone from there. Lots of people are saying it's from the Meath game, they lost the game or whatever. I actually think you can take it back even further to this Kerry team, where they managed to find themselves, where they've rescued themselves from this season. You think about the players they've lost, the job that Jack has to do with rebuilding. Like, if you can take yourself back to where you watched that Kerry team then, there's no way you would have thought they could get to an All-Ireland final performance like that.
Back in April, absolutely not. But it did, like, it took them a while, I suppose, to kind of find their groove. And I suppose the rules themselves were still evolving midway through the championship.
Yeah.
They were kind of really only getting, I mean, like, if you go back to the league, for instance, Jacqui, Kerry were one of the teams conspicuous by their absence on kicking 2-pointers, but like, they're the kings of 2-pointers because they're the kings of pretty much every aspect of the game when it's played to the pitch that they can play it to. It took them a while to kind of get their mojo going, I think, from a Cork perspective. That in that game, early doors, that's the time that you're probably going to catch them. Like, but after that, once the sails go up and there's a kind of a full pitch, you know, they coped with a lot of different types of challenges, injuries. I mean, who would have seen Mark O'Shea, Sean O'Brien as a midfield starting pair? I think those two guys are only in their early 20s, and look how frightening that might be for the rest of us. And I think, look, in general, I mean, people are saying, oh, this is the sweetest and this and that. I think if you look at it, like people are saying they beat the 3 Ulster teams. They actually beat 4. They actually beat 4 Ulster teams on the way to winning it. And I think it was a combined total of about 34, 35 points across the 4 fixtures. So that's not just beating teams. That's pretty much taking the lesson book out, and we're all sitting down here now and we're going to get a schooling. And that's effectively what they've done. And it's not really a surprise that they've gotten to where they've gotten to. They would look for certain little things to sort of ignite their season. I think the criticism from within the county was definitely one aspect which I think annoyed them to a certain extent, and definitely was a spark that kick-started in the wake of the Meath defeat. But I'm not too sure about that Meath defeat either, Jacqui. I think they were half asleep going up there. Were they really overly bothered? I think once the season really started and knockout football kicked in, we saw the real Kerry from there on in. And I think, look, Enda and Whelan have both mentioned the rules. They have been massive beneficiaries because they've got such incredible quality up front. And I think the biggest thing is you are now going to have to sort of reevaluate what you do when you come up against them, because I think they are not the kind of county, we've seen this historically, they're one and done. That's not them. You know, they will not be thinking, well, look, let's disappear now off the stage for 20 years. They will be thinking grandiose, and that's why I have a sneaky feeling Jack O'Connor might hang around. Because
I was going to ask you that. Why would he go?
And one other thing with that, Jacqui, and Enda mentioned about the Tyrone underage, and like, we will need Tyrone. I think Gaelic football might need Tyrone to come quickly here, because if you look at the landscape here, there is a massive job of work to be done in Dublin. Massive. And this stems from the players that Dublin lost last year as opposed to what might happen this year. I think the window has very much narrowed from a Galway perspective. We know Mayo are going to be under new management and are in a massive transitional phase. Donegal look like they need to really rethink how they play the game. And you would wonder where Armagh go with all of this. So if you're saying to yourself, where are the challengers going to come from?
Okay, well, let's take the Jack O'Connor question first, Ciarán, because the one thing that he hasn't done as manager is gone back to back. And so if that's something in his head that he's thinking, I want another piece of history etched to my name. He's got 5 All-Ireland medals as a manager, 2 more as a selector as well. There's very little he hasn't done. He said yesterday initially that he was going to step away, and then as we saw in last night's programme, he decided, actually...
He's a little more coy.
I'm not sure. So what do you do if you're in his position? What are you thinking?
Well, I tell you, listen, I agree with Rory and agree with Enda said. They've got to smell blood here, and you know what I mean. And he's got to look at the profile of players he has, and he's like, as Enda touched on, they're all kind of in their prime, Jacqui, and they brought the game to a new level. And we saw kind of, I suppose, when you look back and you look at, okay, how Armagh approached and they blew them out of the water. Tyrone tried to do something different, blew them out of the water. Donegal was a version of Armagh, but tried to, push a little bit higher, blew them out of the water. So like and Rory's touched on it in terms of some of the other teams that are probably flagging now. Some have to go through a bit of transition. So he's got to smell blood, and he's got to be thinking, back to back, and you go back to back, then you're getting excited about 3 in a row, and
and it's the way they think.
But that's similar to kind of what happened with Dublin. Like it was very much, get the first, and then went back to back, and then the 3 on the Bulls, and all that energy that they take with it, and that's the Kerry way. That's the Kerry way, and they will reflect on the last decade, and they'll be thinking, that this team has been coming for a while. And you look at Tyrone, you look at the talent that Tyrone have coming through at minor and under 20. That's going to take a little bit of time. That doesn't miraculously turn into an All-Ireland winning team. And we saw this with this Kerry team, that they had their ups and downs when those minors came through, and was David Clifford, Shani O'Shea part of that great minor team. It took them time to really embed in and start, dominating the game, which they've started to do now. So there's a massive opportunity for them over the next 2 or 3 years to really make hay.
And one of the biggest things, the big teams that really start to go on multiple title-winning journeys, at some stage along that journey, there is an aura that develops around them that starts to win games almost before they set in the pitch. We've seen it in the hurling side, Kilkenny, Limerick, those teams, Dublin got an event, but they didn't have that aura with their first win on that run. Kerry, for me, the way that they have won this All-Ireland, the dominance over those other perceived strong teams, just the physicality they brought. I used to comment earlier in the week about Kerry been playing with this iron fist within the velvet glove. They would disagree with Rory a wee bit in terms of, I think that Tullamore, and I think that hurt. The psychologists would tell us that negative motivation isn't particularly strong. I believe it's particularly strong in the Irish psychology and in Gaelic football. Those Kerry players had a fire and an anger that you don't usually associate with Kerry, or certainly not visibly so. I think it has always been there in their top teams, but it was visibly there. They were going after players on the opposition if it needed to be done. They were aggressive and rounded. They were celebrating turnovers with real aggression. They were celebrating scores. They were just bullying teams, which isn't a classic Kerry way. Kerry usually pat you on the head, tell you you're great, and beat you anyway. But they bullied the 3 teams, quarter-final, semi-final, and final. And so in year 1 of this potential team, there is already now an aura around them that for any team to take down that Kerry team in Croke Park, if they get anywhere near this form, is a serious challenge.
And just on that, like, well, that Croke Park factor is a big thing as well. I think that's, Kerry get to Croke Park, that they bring that aura and they bring that confidence, and we've seen that in the past, even going back to 2009. They landed in the quarterfinal against us, and all of a sudden they spark into life. There's something about Croke Park that's a great leveler, and I think if you reflect on the rules this year, a lot of the games, there was a lot of talk in the early parts of the year about teams that were strong on 2-pointers, and out in provincial grounds where there's a bit of a wind blowing, and when there's a good wind behind you, it changes the whole dynamic maybe of that 2-point kick. That's not there once you get to Croke Park. The 2-pointers become a little bit more challenging. The accuracy has to be better, the skill level has to be better, and I think that shone through once Kerry got to that position this year as well. I think the dynamic of the games outside of Croke Park and inside of Croke Park under the new rules are distinctly different.
And Jacqui, there was a piece on your show last night that NASA Kennedy did, and a big shout out to NASA with Mick Foley. I thought it was a beautiful piece of TV and
That was class.
very, very very well crafted, and that they're not easy, by the way. There's a lot of work goes into those, so well done to NASA and Mick. But if you ever wanted to be reminded of their ability to find a way, and how I think in a lot of ways that 2014 win under Eamon might actually become, there'll be a bigger glow off that in time, because that was an All-Ireland where they had to win, where they kind of had to eschew and almost rid themselves of a lot of the values, and they had to sort of play a game that maybe was slightly alien to them, and they still found a way. And that's just what they do. That is what they do. They feel that it's a massive part of their identity. It is everything in Kerry, and I think that yesterday's performance and certainly the 3 performances we've seen in the knockout stages in Croke Park, I think each one was almost a statement in and of itself. They were making different statements every time, and it was a case of, we're here now, and let's see who can try and knock us off our perch.
Funny you say that, Rory, actually, because that was a thought that I had yesterday, Enda, when I was just looking at the way it was coached. If you'd have told me that David Clifford would spend 80% of his time on the sideline and still score 9 points, but they found a way to just, pull off that loop play when they needed it and did it. I thought it was a coaching masterclass from Jack O'Connor, using the 2 big lads inside, pushing the midfielders in, creating the space, leaving Clifford out there, and then just pulling him in when he needed to. Because I think one of the things that really annoyed him maybe earlier in the year was people talking about Jim McGuinness being a messiah of Gaelic football and changing the game and whatever. And I'd say Jack O'Connor was thinking, do you know what? I'll have my day. And when it came to it, I actually think, Rory's right. When we do talk about 2014 and what Eamon Fitzmaurice did, he completely changed a game plan for Kerry. I actually think Jack O'Connor did something very, very similar yesterday.
It was what Jack O'Connor has done has been phenomenal in dealing with everything that he's dealt with. But yeah, yes.
And sorry, I should say Cian O'Neill probably deserves an enormous amount of credit in that too.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole change up of a management team, and then to handle the injuries, to handle the new rules, to win the league title, the Munster, and then the All Ireland. It's phenomenal. But yeah, the tactical positioning of David Clifford yesterday. Funny, I was sitting down this morning. I was going through my club team's GPS results from the Friday night league game just past, and I was thinking, what would David Clifford's GPS results have been yesterday? I would say probably 1K total distance.
Take him off.
About 100 sprint meters, and yet, 13, 14 touches and huge damage. He was walking, he was standing, he was pulling Brent McCole out, he was waiting, and then it was just like a rapier, bang in, shot and reset. It was efficiency in motion. It was just sublime the way he played it, but it was so clever because yes, they pulled him out to the arc. One of the things I forgot to mention last night when I was doing my piece on the zonal defence was that whenever teams set up zonally, particularly if you do what Kerry do and throw them bigger men inside, it sucks that, and Donegal did sort of keep their zonal defence to the arc. It sucks them in deep, and then David Clifford was out there and it only was a one-on-one. It was purely a one-on-one. If he's inside winning that ball on the 21-yard line, he'll have McCole for company, and he'll have retreating defenders in. Because all of Donegal's 11 defenders are sitting inside that arc, then David knows if he gets 1 or 2 meters from McCole with his shooting range, it's gone. So he absolutely played it to a T. And like Kerry hit, 11 2-point shots, I think, in the first half yesterday, only scored 4. Reflecting on that, I think critically, their first couple of ones all sailed over. Yeah. If Kerry hit 4 of those 2-pointers and all miss at the start, the doubts creep into Kerry and they will adapt their approach. David Clifford nailed them. Bang, bang, bang. And suddenly all the doubts was in Donegal, and you could feel it really, really early in yesterday's game, this sense of doom coming across Donegal when the first 4 or 5 Kerry scorers were all not David Clifford or Shawnee O'Shea, and you're thinking, okay, Donegal's taking on water here, but at least they're keeping David quiet. Bang bang, his position on that outside arc worked an absolute treat for them.
And on that was one of the the sideshows of that really was, okay, Clifford was in that number 10 position, but the fact that Donegal had sat deep and they let Kerry ball players have the ball, like Paddy's standing in that kind of quarterback position, soling the ball, so no heat being put on him. He's giving it to, Brian Brady or Gavin White. They have all their ball, they have all the guys that are comfortable in possession around that arc. No pressure being put on them. And it really allowed Kerry to set up nearly that kind of these set plays where Clifford was able to make that run because there was no heat being put on the guys with the ball. It was, it was brilliantly done, but you would also question that Donegal should have been, that was because they sat deep and weren't putting heat on the Kerry guys outside the arc. It allowed them set up those plays, and if as Enda said, if you're going to give Clifford a ball in a one-on-one situation, he's dynamite, and that's where, like, that's probably one of the things, with myself and Rory were kind of chatting last night, and we were chatting in a kind of in relation to the players that are, if you're on a team now and you're sent into the edge of the square, like, it's usually the big midfielders, it generally means,
I have a job for you now, right? It's a big job now. Very important job now for you.
Yeah, you go in and pull a man in, but like, that's what a lot of teams are doing, and they're getting their better players and their better shooters and their better guys that can take better lads at a pace that can go one-on-one. They're getting them out on the edge of the arc, and that's where the key part of the offensive game has become now. It's probably why we're not seeing even as many goal chances, because a lot of teams are kind of following that model to try pull bodies in, create extra space around the arc, and get the best guys in the best position on the ball. And a lot of teams are kind of following that template now.
Do you know what happens though, Enda, is something works, a plan works, and then everybody's going to copycat it. You're obviously involved there. You see it even in your own club at your high level, where you'll say, okay, if you'd have asked me at the start of the year, is the Donegal zone defense effective? I think everybody would have said they've got the best in the country. Well, suddenly they get blown away yesterday, and now everybody today is right. That's the death knell of the zone defense. It's gone. So what happens now for 2026?
Yeah, we are desperate for copycatting, and I suppose the copycat thing is thrown out, and it feels like an insult whenever you're trying to manage teams. But whenever you're with a team, looking at the county setups, that is our top level of the game. So it's only natural to look for ideas for how this game pans out, because them's your best examples, and then you can learn from that and you can see what works. And inevitably the team that wins is this team for whom most of the stuff works, and so you're more inclined to look upon that favorably and see how that. Now the probably the obvious thing is that you have to see, does what them top teams are doing, is it going to fit your team? Have you got that personnel? And the key thing for lots of people to remember is that the opponent you're playing, quite thankfully, is not Kerry, is not David Clifford and Gavin White and Paddy Clifford and Joe O'Connor and players like that. So I think the zonal defensive approach certainly had its limitations exposed on a huge stage yesterday. But equally, the man-to-man defence can be torn apart with these new rules, probably even quicker than the zonal defence, to be honest. The quality of football that Kerry played in that first 19 minutes yesterday would tear apart pretty much whatever defensive strategy you want to do. The only way of trying to defeat that, for me, when a team has that form and that artillery, is you have to win your primary possession in midfield and not give it away, because then at least you're going to keep putting the ball on the other goalkeeper's tee. If you can put the ball dead, and then you're out to compete in midfield, and if you get there and get fair share there, then they're going to be, that team's chances of attack is going to be more limited. So for teams to sit and think the zonal defence isn't there against the vast majority of club teams, I think the zonal defence will, and the vast majority of county teams, the zonal defence, as Donegal has showed and as Armagh have showed, is highly effective and will win you 80-90% of games. Does it have its problems? Yep. So does the man-to-man. There is no easy solution. Jim McGinley himself was at after the match in Killarney at the start of the year said you can't defend with these new rules. I think that's the key. There is no foolproof way of shutting. You cannot park the bus, and I think we're all the better for it. At a great line or one of the fellas in my WhatsApp group, he'd be known for a bit of a cranky fella, and to be fair, most good lines come from the cranky fellas. And we're chatting about the match yesterday, and he just says, "Well, the one thing I know, last year we were booking discussing a pigeon the day after the Ireland final."
Yeah.
So
There you
we're
go.
not doing that now. We're admiring the skills of players, and we're all the better for it.
Yeah. And one of the things, Jacqui, like you mentioned there about zonal defenses and different types of tactics, I think the game will evolve again. But one aspect that I would love to see happen, I think, like we have to bear in mind this is the first year of a major rules experiment, which we're not really out the back of yet. I mean, Jim Gavin was on the live show yesterday and obviously said that these have to go before Congress in October before they're rubber stamped and they come in. I think one aspect, and Enda just mentioned there about you can't defend. I do think the dial has shifted hugely in favour of the attacker, and that's not a bad thing. And the guys, you all did great pieces last night about the return of the start forward, and that's what you want to see. You want to see skillful players playing at the peak of their powers, because that's what inspires next generation, and on we go. My only criticism really would be the lack of physical contact that the referees, I think the referees have to be slightly more liberal when it comes to that. And I think, Whelan, you made the point last night about how brilliant the referees have been, and they have. But I don't know how you create a policy when it's not as clearly defined in rule. But I definitely think to give something back to the defensive side of things, that's where a physical game with David Clifford, sure, you're backing up the right tree straight away. A 6'4" monster who can kick beautifully off both feet and is athletic. But I just think in terms of, like, we'll say the art of defending, one-on-one defending, they can't be blown for small pernickety stuff. Like, you're going to have to give the defenders some, because I think sometimes when I've noticed this quite a bit. If a player is siding in from the side, or if they're moving in, they're almost half afraid to touch him. They're almost half afraid, because if I do, it could be a black card, or all of a sudden it's a 2-point shot from
Not
outside
anymore.
the arc.
The black card is gone now.
Yeah, but even the ones, like, if I give away a free outside the arc, it's a 2-point shot, like when you have the likes of the Beggins and even Clifford himself, Sean O'Shea's. So they're almost afraid of their own shadow to put a tackle in. And I think there has to be some discussion, I think, at administrative level to give something back to the defensive teams to say, look, the game is still a physical game. We want to encourage that. How do we go about it?
I'll put that to you, Ciarán, because I actually, and genuinely, I'm not even trying to be smart about the black card, but when was the last black card we actually saw in Gaelic football? Because it seemed it was there forever. And then we've seen plenty of examples that we could have said, oh, maybe that was a black card.
There wasn't even a booking yesterday, Jacqui. It was almost non-contact at times. Sorry, Whelan.
But that's one of the things about yesterday. There was no breaches. There was no 50 meter. I don't think the ball was brought up 50 meter. There was no yellow cards. There was no black cards. I think it's a challenging one because we've never had a defined tackle, really. Does anybody know what a tackle is? It can be interpreted in a different way, and depending on a referee in a given day, you'll get away with something. A lot of players will play the referee, knowing how far he's letting the bar go in terms of the tackle. Probably both teams felt aggrieved at point with some of the frees kind of maybe given yesterday. It probably balanced overall. But I think I agree with you, Rory, in that probably the only time now you're seeing kind of turnovers is when somebody slows down a player and the second man gets in and slows the play, and they manage to force a kind of a turnover. You see very, very few one-on-one turnovers because there probably is that nervousness of guys to kind of commit to that tackle.
It's a lot of jockeying and shadowing, isn't it, Whelan?
Yeah, well, it's staying goal side, and it's it's watching the run, and if the player takes you on, you do have to tackle, but you still have to be very, very careful, because even that 2-point zone yesterday, that 2-pointer that Kerry got, Donegal got it back to 4 points, and boom, that kind of that put them 6 points. It can be heavily punished now for an innocuous tackle outside that arc. So I think like the whole area of a defined tackle, this is a problem that the game, not that I wouldn't say it's a huge problem. It's an interpretation that's been in the game for a long, long time, and can be a frustration to supporters and players because it's how you apply it. And I don't know whether it's something the FRC ever looked at. Like I said to you, I think I said to you yesterday, I don't like the Australian one where you can grab around. I never kind of like that as part of the Australian rules. You can pull a guy and pull to the ground. So it's a challenge one how you define something to keep the skill level within the game.
It's the skill level of the players too. Like one thing I thought we would have seen this year is more traps being sent, say, for cornerbacks, a short kick out to a cornerback, which are definitely still happening. And then you're thinking, there's a cornerback, and the worst area of the pitch to get the ball, and he can't go back to the goalkeeper. Jeepers, there's going to be lots of pressure and turnovers happening. But the backs themselves have shown themselves it is so difficult to dispossess a man one-on-one in space, and so teams are struggling with that. Like really, the only turnovers yesterday were keeping out of contact. But the problem is the coaching level and the ability of our players is so high. So if you brought in something to allow greater physical contact in the tackle, then the players would immediately go back to the stay out of contact recipe of football, which Kerry to a large extent were sort of playing yesterday as well. They occasionally their power runners would break through challenges. The likes of Joe O'Connor, when he starts on a train, is going to go through a challenge. But generally speaking, Kerry were just skipping that ball out of contact the whole time. So if you allow a lot of contact, the teams will coach themselves. I think one of the things, as far as I know, the FRC are looking at is that you can't. I know there's further sandbox games now coming up, and I think they're looking at that you can't pass back out of your own half again. And again, that'll probably encourage a team to push up and try and keep a wee bit more heat on further out the pitch. But again, the same way as those cornerbacks have been able to maintain possession, even though they're getting pressed, I don't know if that will go. But I think it would certainly let it roll for a year or two and see how the defensive coaching, the ability of those one-on-one tacklers gets better.
Eventually, it'll be basketball, lads.
Yeah, when you say allow more physical contact, I suppose the challenge is how.
Yeah.
I think the steps one is critical. I'm not. It initially
that
was kept
lost its
really
way a bit, didn't it?
That's gone as well.
Yeah, I think the steps one is critical. I think if it was kept really tight, it might help as well. It's just such a shade of grey as a fella is breaking through a tackle, and there's an arm on him and he's getting pulled and he's given the benefit of the doubt. I think if you stopped giving the benefit of the doubt, I think the steps alone probably would be enough. Because that, when a team really presses up on an opposition, the most likely thing to happen is that somewhere the player under pressure is going to take an extra step or two. That's your greater chance of a turnover other than a brilliant tackle or a giveaway pass.
One weekend of that where they clamped down on it, because
somebody got a note.
And it kind of faded away. Really, as that can happen sometimes, you get a surge of an application of a rule, and then it kind of dies away because I don't know whether fans become frustrated with it and referees kind of want to let the game flow, maybe.
Yeah, totally understood. All right, come here. We'll wrap it up, but I do want to because I do feel, Rory, that the rules are actually the thing that have made the biggest impact on the season. You even just look at the scoring, like this year, Kerry got 126 yesterday versus Armagh, won an All-Ireland last year, scoring 111. So an extra 15 points in an All-Ireland final is probably a rubber stamp in itself to say that this thing is better. But marks out of 10 of the season as a whole and what it might have given us this year?
I suppose you can be accused of recency bias because the two semi-finals really didn't fire as contests. And I thought yesterday's game was, I genuinely did think it was over after the first quarter. What's that saying in golf? You can't win a major on the first day, but you can lose it. And I think that's kind of what happened to Donegal. The game was busted for them. 13-4, you weren't coming back from that. So it was a bit disappointing considering how much everybody had anticipated the contest itself was going to be, and that didn't materialise. And that's true no fault of Donegal. They were just outclassed by the better side. So the two semi-finals and final might somehow, for some people, maybe take a little bit of the sheen off. But for me, this year, given where football was, and I think that's where you kind of have to put the context, I would say it's 10. I would go for a 10 out of 10 because we had some amazing stories. You know, we've had some amazing games right through the provincial, right through the league, actually. Now, there's another day's work there about where teams go in terms of their ambitions when it gets to the latter stages of the league. And look, next year's calendar might be slightly more benign to that fact. But from the very, very get-go, right through all the provincial series, we had some incredible matches, loads of upsets, lots of drama. Loads of, like, you know, as you guys made reference to last night, the return of the star forward. We're seeing the skills come back. We're seeing the crowds come back. We're seeing, you know, like the quality teams, the best players rise to the fore. In my view, sure, like you could not but give it a 10, given where football had been for the previous however long.
Yeah. Lads, I'll let you come in on that. Enda, you go first. Oh, you don't even, Mark's at a 10. I'm really just sort of throwing that out there as something for you to do. But I think Rory's right. Just from where football was to where it got to this year, it's been exceptional.
What do you call that judge on Dancing with the Stars? It was the Big 10.
Len. Or is it Len? Oh, yeah.
You remind me of that.
Get the sign up.
I think it would have been the best championship ever if the big heavyweight clashes at the end of it had have turned into big heavyweight clashes. In the end, it was the biggest heavyweight of all strutting their stuff and showing now where the level of the game is at. But look, absolutely, I've loved it. I think the supporters have loved it. I think just the difference in the people that you meet in the street, everybody talking about the game, everybody looking forward to games. Club games, players are loving it. So it's a brilliant time. The one fly in the ointment is Kerry looks so good, but we've lived with the dominant Dublin team. They have eventually got chased down. So I think we'll all know that it won't go on forever, and there is some very special players to sit back and enjoy over the next few years, and I think we'll get to enjoy them. But I just hope we need every big team, every good era needs two teams going at it at least head to head. The Dublin team was made better by Mayo. Kerry needs challengers.
Yeah, I think they're going to have them now. And I think you're being cute now about what Tyrone might have coming at us as well. Anyway, Wheelo, last word to you.
Yeah, I think, Jacqui, anybody that I suppose complains about football should be locked in a room and forced to watch some of the matches from the last few years, you know.
Here.
That would be a form of torture now.
Yeah, my barometer really this year was when you were watching back games that weren't shown live and preparing for the weekend or whatever, you were able to stay awake. You know what I mean? Usually, you know, the last 2 years, you'd be nodding off and you'd be rewinding and saying, geez, I missed that bit. Because it was thoroughly enjoyable, and I genuinely mean that. It was actually looking back on some of the games, particularly in the groups and provincials, where like you were actually the enjoyment factor was brilliant. Everybody was back talking about the games. Yeah, that's another barometer of, you know, meeting people generally on a day-to-day basis. People were talking about Gaelic football again
in a positive way.
The buzz was back. You know, they went for something quite radical. It bedded down really well. And yeah, there's probably tweaks, and it's great that they're going to continue to look at it. And I would concur, lads, an absolute brilliant year, and so much to look forward to now over the next couple of years.
And I just, when you said that, Whelan, I'm just thinking there was another moment of the year we're asked, obviously, for a moment of the years, and I went with that return of the star forwards one. But I'm just actually thinking, just as you say that, like one of the games I got to do co-commentary on was Monaghan v Down in the athletic grounds. Of the big games that weekend, because of the way obviously the GA Plus on the Saturday and it didn't particularly jump off the page. And anyway, I'd done my homework, as you say, Wheelo, and I'd watched a couple of games. Okay, hang on, I actually think this could be a really good game, and I went to it anyway. And it just took off. And the best moment for me, I think I said it on CoCom, because we obviously can hear the refs. We're mic'd up to the refs. And David Coldrick, the referee, at one stage was going by far. And he just, Christ, this is fast.
This is quick.
And I laughed when I heard it. I just thought, isn't that brilliant? The athletic grounds was stuff. Monaghan Down, not a glamour fixture, not a fixture that maybe would have unbelievable.
Yeah. And the same day, actually, Jacqui, I think that was the same day that we got our only kind of real shooter on the hooter.
Westmeath.
Was it Mayo and Donegal came after that?
Oh,
Wasn't
yeah.
that the 4 o'clock game? And
Yeah.
Ciarán Moore kicked the point to kill Mayo off in the championship with the last kick of the game, which was just an incredible day's Gaelic football. It was unbelievable stuff.
Yeah. Well, look, here's to more of that in 2026. But lads, it's been a thoroughly enjoyable year. Thanks so much for all your contributions to the podcast right throughout the year. Whelan, Enda, enjoy some time off. I hope that's what you're getting over the coming weeks. And don't forget, myself and Rory will be here over the next couple of weeks. We'll do ladies football and the camogie season to round it all off. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.
Dublin